Yane Bhaviniro Goranga Bolite Ave Prakashari Hare Hare Bolite Ruparagona Pade Rahamora Asha Pratana Karoye Sadana Rotamadasa Sada Narotamadasa Agoranga Bolite Habe Pulakasharira Hari Hari Bolite Nai Yane Babiniro Goranga Bolite Have Pulakasharira Hare Hare Bolite Na Yane Babinira Srila Narottam Das Thakur ki jai. Does this harmonium have a constant drone or what? Sounds like there's a constant drone going on in the background. I don't know. It doesn't normally happen like that. Anyway, we finished. That's that point. Hare Krishna. So normally you read the Bhagavatam. I don't know. Our time, we have to finish by 8:45. Is that right? So I don't know if we'll have time to read the verse this morning. Well, what we can do is we'll talk about Narottam Das, whatever little mercy comes our way, and if there's a little time left, we'll read the verse. Okay? Because there's no purport to the verse. Is that okay? And whoever oversees these things can let the sloka writer know what the next verse is like. Om Jnana Timrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakata Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Guruna Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Panamami Hare Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Vipasindu Bhyevyacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Prabhupada, Jai Narottam Das Thakur ki Jai. Hare Krishna. So, there are some wonderful books. There's a wonderful book out by Mother Sitala, on Narottam Das Thakur. I don't know if you have it here. You have that book on Narottam Das? It came out maybe last year, beginning of last year or the year before, I can't remember. She's done her whole life, most of her life, she's been very attached to Narottam Das Thakur and has put together a very wonderful book, which I haven't read. I know it's wonderful because so many devotees have told me it's wonderful. I've got a copy, but I just haven't read it. A little bit, maybe not much. There's also Satyaraj Prabhu has brought out the book on Vaishnava saints, where he has written a brief biography of Narottam Das Thakur there, along with Srinivasacharya and Shyamananda Prabhu. Also, in other places we see reference to Narottam Das. Prabhupada particularly refers to him in the form of quoting verses from his songs, just like that song we just sang, Vishaya Charya Kabe Shudhabiman Kabihama Hairabo Shri Vrindavana, a famous line that if we want to enter into Vrindavan, we have to be completely free of material desire for sense gratification. Pretty tall order. But in many of his songs, in different songs, he writes songs. Generally the devotees write songs, the pure devotees, write songs in a very, very specific and systematic way. They're not just random thoughts off the top of their head. They're from the heart, but they're also preachers. When they reveal these songs to the world, they're meant, just like when Narottam Das compiled many of his songs, and there was no such thing as a printing press, of course, as you well know. Everything was handwritten. So imagine if some of you were going, who's going on book distribution? Are you all going on book distribution, all three of you? Do you go on books? Imagine if you went out on the street and tried to preach to someone. I've got this fantastic book. Here's a pen and paper. Just sit down and you can write it, you know. You can, you know, copy the book. How many people would be interested? Even we wouldn't be interested, probably, right? If you had one copy in the whole of, you know, Sydney, and if you wanted another copy, you had to hand write it, you know. It'd be quite a laborious task, wouldn't it? And yeah, you can hand write it for $20. You know. Nobody would do it. So by Lord Chaitanya's mercy, we have printing presses for the mass distribution of Krishna consciousness. But during the time of Narottam Das Thakur, there were no printing presses. In fact, as you well know, that King Bihirambir stole all the Goswami literatures. Right? And it was quite some time before Srinivasacharya recovered them. And Narottam Das, in the meantime, had gone off to Bengal, together with Shyamananda Prabhu, and they didn't have any literature. So he was compiling songs which, you know, captured the essential teachings of the six Goswamis. On top of that, the majority of people are illiterate anyway. At least they were then, in terms of modern illiteracy, or let's say how we judge illiteracy, isn't it? If you can't read or write. They didn't read and write mostly. They didn't need to read and write. They learnt by hearing. But there was nothing, and still they had to have some reference points. So Narottam Das, of course others also, compiled many songs, especially for the common people, in simple Bengali language, so that they could sing these songs. Till this very day, you know, common people sing the songs, just like, you know, in the material world sometimes, not so much now. There used to be people used to sing, you know, aloud on the street, popular music and things like that, you know what I mean? It was like, it was a sign that you're kind of a bit happy or something. Nowadays they're too busy on their mobiles, walking along on their mobiles, right? Got two plugs in the ears. And they're shouting at somebody on their mobile phone. One walking this way, one walking that way. You know, now even in Bengal you hear many villagers or simple people singing the songs of Lochan Das or Narottam Das. So, very significant contribution in our Krishna consciousness movement, the appearance of Narottam Das Thakur. And we'll just hear a little bit about it this morning. after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had accepted the sannyas order of life. I think maybe even before that, don't know exactly when, but probably before, when he was in Navadvip. Yeah, it must have been before. He was, there's not much said about Lokanath Goswami. There's not much mentioned. One of the great devotees in Chaitanya pastimes was known Lokanath Goswami. And Lord Chaitanya personally, from Bengal, he personally sent Lokanath Goswami to Vrindavan. Many great devotees. He was renunciate, along with Bhagavad Goswami and other renunciate. They were sent to Vrindavan. Particularly, one of the purposes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Vrindavan was to uncover the lost places of Krishna's pastimes. Huh? So Bhagavad Goswami and Lokanath Goswami, that was kind of their mission. And to a large degree, they were uncovering various places in Vrindavan, forest and so on. But before Lokanath left, Lord Chaitanya gave him instruction. He said that in the future I want you to initiate one disciple whose name will be Narottam. He told him like that. And then of course that was that. So Lokanath, there was no internet in those days, and even transport was basically walking. At least for sadhus. The kshatriyas maybe riding horses, some chariots, but sadhus would generally walk. So there wasn't that much kind of like, quick communication like nowadays. So they went in different directions. Lord Chaitanya took sannyas. And he also desired very much, some years later, to go to Vrindavan. So he set off for Vrindavan with some of his followers, Nityananda Prabhu and others. They went off to Vrindavan. But on the way, Lord Chaitanya decided to go through Bengal, which you don't normally do. And particularly he had a mission in Bengal, which was to meet with Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis. So they were living in Ramkeli, a small village in Bangladesh side. And when Lord Chaitanya came there, nearby there is the river Ganga, known as Padma in that district. And there's one town there called Keturi. And in that town, of course that's where Narottam was eventually to appear. But across the river from Keturi, Lord Chaitanya and his associates came to the river Padma, and Lord Chaitanya began to cry very loudly, Narottam, Narottam, Narottam. Nobody knew. It means, the best of humans, so it could be anyone. Nobody really knew who it was, except for Nityananda, knew that Lord Chaitanya was indicating that so soon a great personality of the name Narottam would appear in that place. Then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared or revealed what his intention was. And he said this great personality will appear across the river in Keturi, and he will be the embodiment of my own ecstasy. The manifestation of Kirtan Prema will appear in the form of Narottam in Keturi. And I will bestow my own prema insight in him. I will deposit this prema. Lord Chaitanya then immersed himself in the river Padma, and the Padma overflowed in ecstasy. When Lord Chaitanya entered the Padma, he said, I deposited my prema here in Padma. And Narottam Das in the future, he will absorb that prema which I have left. And then suddenly Padma, River Padma personified, appeared before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, understanding the mission of Lord Chaitanya, but also asking, how will I recognize this personality, Narottam? And then Lord Chaitanya said, well, the same thing. When that person bathes in your river, you will overflow. That way you will recognize him, and then you must bestow or give this prema, which I'm depositing with you. You must give it to him. It's also known that Narottam was the ecstasy of Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda's transcendental ecstasy, Nityananda, was also manifest in the personification of Narottam Das. He was very, very special member of our parampara. So anyway, time went by. Lord Chaitanya told Nityananda that you should stay here in Keturi and deliver this Narottam, bring this Narottam to the river Padma, etc. as your duty. So anyway, time passed, quite a bit of time passed. And more or less exactly around about the time of Lord Chaitanya's departure, when he unmanifested his pastime, which is about 1534, thereabouts, our calendar. At that time, Narottam Das appeared in Keturi. And he was the son of King Krishnananda, and his mother's name Narayani Devi Dasi. He was their only son. Krishnananda was like a local king, but he was, I think it was Kayastha, he was considered to be Shudra caste. There were some of the leaders, some of the kings, some of the, aristocracy, so to speak, had some kind of mixture coming from different parts of India, and they were considered to be Shudras in Bengal. So it wasn't considered to be a particularly high-class family by caste, but they were very qualified people, and they were basically local kings. The father, Krishnananda, was like a local king, so he had great wealth, land, and so on. And he was very happy when he had a son, and the son was very, very special. At the grain-giving ceremony, Annaprasana ceremony, when the child's a few months old, they usually, give your first grains to the child. So they brought the grains, and Narottam wouldn't eat the grains. He refused. He wouldn't open his mouth. The father was a little bit disturbed. He didn't know why, It's the first grain ceremony. Usually the child opens its mouth, it's some kind of, and somehow or another spoon goes in and something gets in there, Usually. There's a little difficulty sort of swallowing it, but usually something goes in. But this child was not opening his mouth. Nobody knew what to do. Suddenly one saintly person was there, and he brought some Mahaprasad. And with the spoon he fed Narottam, or they fed Narottam this Mahaprasad. Immediately Narottam opened his mouth and honored the Mahaprasadam. So everyone understood why he didn't eat the grains, because they were not offered to Krishna. He refused to eat the first, whatever it was that they prepared to give him, because it wasn't offered. As soon as Mahaprasad came along, immediately he honored it. He was a few months old baby. Like that, he was an amazing child. And he was a Shrutidhar. Shrutidhar means photogenic memory, You remember things very easily. So he was a brilliant scholar, child. He just learned everything very easily. In those days, they didn't learn all this rubbish that we have to learn nowadays, ancient history and all this stuff, all the speculative philosophy and science that you have to learn nowadays at school. And just some necessary things, but mostly Sanskrit and things like that he'd be learning at school. It's not like nowadays. Although some people are studying Sanskrit. What is your name? Pardon? Tilak. 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 Well, that's an amazing name. Your mother gave you that name? Well, his mother's a devotee. What's your mother's name?
Susevini.
Pardon? Susevini. Susevini. Susevini? Yeah. And she's a devotee. So, as you know, in Port Macquarie, they have a restaurant up there. So Tilak Prabhu, is that your initiated name also? No. Tilak is studying Sanskrit, am I right? And neuroscience or something? At the University of Sydney, is it? So he's very unusual. Someone studying Sanskrit is very rare, isn't it, in the Western world? Not a very common thing. Not very common in those days in India. So anyway, he was a brilliant scholar, but he wasn't so interested in the let's say, the academia. He was more interested. There was many great devotees in that area, but there was one devotee who had access to all of Lord Chaitanya, because Lord Chaitanya had just passed away, or not passed away, but had unmanifested his pastimes. So now we're talking in the past. So this devotee had a very, right from the beginning to the end, had some or another, had information of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, and he was always talking about it. So Narottam would spend countless hours in the association of this saintly person, listening to the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. I was becoming very, very ecstatic. As time went by, he became a teenager, and about 13 years of age, of course. And then he had a dream. One night in a dream, Nityananda Prabhu appeared to him, and he told him that tomorrow morning you must go down to the river Padma and take your bath in the river Padma, and there you will get the full mercy of Gaura Prema if you take your bath. So he woke up very quickly in the morning. In ecstasy, he proceeded down to the river Padma, and then he immersed himself in the river Padma. And sure enough, the banks of the river Padma overflowed. They overflowed. And Padma was in ecstasy to embrace this great devotee, this expansion of the Lord's ecstasy. And she immediately delivered prema to Narottam Das. But not only that, but Lord Chaitanya personally appeared and embraced Narottam Das. Although and behold, Narottam's complexion was very dark. His family complexion was dark. He was very dark skinned, but when Lord Chaitanya embraced him, he turned molten gold. His skin, everything turned molten gold. And he was imbued with the highest ecstatic Gaura Prem and Radha Krishna Prem. He came out of the river, and in ecstasy, he started to dance, and he was like a madman. Nobody recognized who was this madman, dancing, actually crying out, Gauranga, Gauranga, Gauranga. And meantime, he wasn't going home. He was completely oblivious to family affairs. Parents were wondering, where has he gone? Where is our son gone? So they sent people looking here and there, and then they found him down on the banks of the river Padma. And then they brought him home, and his mother was like, what is going on here? Father was thinking, what's happened to our son? He's gone mad. He wasn't interested in anything. He was just chanting and chanting and going crazy like this. They brought in some, spirit. People come in to remove, maybe some spirit has entered into him. Some evil spirit or some crazy thing has happened to him. And the fellow was telling that they should, massage his body with oil and feed him with a fox. That will get rid of the the spirits inside. Of course, he wouldn't go for it. He had nothing to do with it. He was just totally absorbed in chanting the holy name of Gauranga. And father was thinking, get him married, this, that, the other. What are we going to do with this son? Just like with Raghunath, they put guards on him and everything. He was the only son. He was the heir to the father's property. So it was a big thing. They were really worried what to do. The son's become a madman. And this was going on. And then he was then about the age of 16, he had another vision, dream, whatever. Mahaprabhu came and told him, the time has come, you should go now to Vrindavan. You leave home, go to Vrindavan, and take shelter there of Lokanath Goswami. Accept him as your guru. And so how to do that? He was under lock and key practically. However, one day, around about the same time, one local Muslim, one of the big kings, had heard about Narottam's, because now he was a little famous in the era because he was so scholarly and so learned personality. I wanted to have his association. I wanted to see him. So the king called for Narottam to come to his court. So King Krishnananda didn't really have much choice. He would have been in trouble if he hadn't obliged the Muslim king. So they went off to the Muslim king's court, and then Narottam took this as an opportunity to escape. Somehow or another, whilst he was there, he found a loophole, and he escaped from the Muslim king's palace and ran into the forest and was off deep into the forest, walking on the forest path, because he was the son of a king, so he wasn't used to this type of a lifestyle. And he just walked and walked day and night, knowing that, the guards would be looking for him. There would be search parties out and so on and so forth. But he was walking off into the jungles, and of course his feet were getting blistered, and he would do day and night practically. If you're in a desperate situation sometimes. My father was in the Second World War, fighting in the front lines against the German army, and he said that they couldn't sleep. For weeks on end, he said, we would not be able to sleep. All night long we were marching. and then all day fighting. Because you can't sleep. It was death on your doorstep. So to him, it would be death if he was caught by the guards. It'd be like fate worse than death. Like a thief sometimes. Also, they steal something, they can't stop in case they get caught when they're trying to get away. So he was like that, trying to escape the vigilance of his parents and the guards and the search parties and what have you. Anyway, he got so exhausted after many days, he practically speaking collapsed. And in that exhausted condition, a Brahmin, one effulgent Brahmana suddenly turned up and said, I brought this for you. And he brought a pot of nectarian milk product for him, which he delivered and disappeared. And then Narottam had a dream, and in the dream, Rupa Goswami appeared, and because Lord Chaitanya also told him to go to Vrindavan to associate with the Goswamis, and told him that Brahmin that came just now was none other than Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's come to revive you. And Rupa Goswami told him that this is because in the spiritual world your service is preparing or boiling milk for Champakalata, one of the Astasakis. Your business is to boil milk to assist her in her service in the afternoon. She makes these amazing milk preparations for Krishna in the afternoon. And your business is to serve under Champakalata. Sometimes it's known that Narottam was Champaka Manjari, the assistant of Champakalata. And sometimes Vilas Manjari, maybe his name is Vilas Manjari, but his service is to assist Champaka Manjari. So Rupa Goswami informed him of this. He was in ecstasy when he honored this milk like that. So then he then proceeded on to Vrindavan. But before he did, the guards, the search party, caught him. They found him in that place, and they were, eager to take him back home, like any good, search party. He was acting on behalf, like they had to deprogram him. So they tried to convince him. His demeanor, his nature was so sweet and so captivating. It was hard to get, heavy with him. So they just inquired, and then they were asking, "You got to come home?" And then he just said, "Well, I'm just like a wife whose father has passed away. I have to enter into the fire. I have no choice. I can't possibly return back home. I know that everyone wants me to, but I can't." And he went on. They were reasoning like this. There's like this sati rite where the chaste wife enters into the fire. He said, "I'm like that. I can't. I've got to enter into the fire," meaning the fire of pure devotional service. And he convinced them. And eventually, they left and didn't take him, and they progressed on, and eventually did reach Vrindavan. And when he reached Mathura, he stayed with one Brahmin in Mathura, and the Brahmin informed him that Rupa Sanatan, Kashishvara, and other great devotees had already passed away just recently. So he was struck, devastated. But he had his vision, again, dream vision, that he should go to the Govindaji temple and there take shelter of Jiva Goswami, as well as take initiation from Lokanath. So he proceeded on to Vrindavan, to the Govindaji temple, which was established by Rupa Goswami. He was in all seeing the beauty of the temple, the deity, and he was in total ecstasy, swooning in ecstasy there. And devotees, the night before, the Lord Chaitanya had appeared as a vision in front of Lokanath Goswami, saying, "Tomorrow Narottam is arriving in Vrindavan." And they were all expecting him. All the Goswamis, whoever was there, had news that this very special person would be arriving in Vrindavan. So Jiva Goswami had heard about he was there, and he made his way there to the Govindaji temple. And indeed, Narottam surrendered to Jiva Goswami to take Siksha. Jiva Goswami had no Diksha disciple, only Siksha disciple. He never initiated anyone. But he gave instruction to all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas who came there. He was after Rupa and Sanatan, he was the chief of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas there in Vrindavan. So he was giving instructions to, as we know, Narottam, Shyamananda, and Srinivas, were Jiva Goswami's main students. There were others, Ramchandra, Kaviraj, and others who were also students of Jiva Goswami, but they were the three main ones. And of course he was immediately attracted, spontaneously attracted when he saw Lokanath Goswami. And he approached Lokanath Goswami and begged him for please to initiate him. But Lokanath Goswami didn't. He said, no, I can't initiate you. And he said, first of all, according to Shastra, an aspiring disciple must chant and develop pure attraction for the holy name for at least 1 year before we can consider initiation. So Narottam took that up along with his other services to Jiva Goswami. For the whole year he was just chanting the holy name. After a year he again approached. He said, no, I've made a vow that, I'm not going to initiate anyone. So he really tested him, a little like Gorkishore Das Babaji testing Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj. So again, another year passed. During this year, Narottam was menially serving Lokanath Goswami in every way he could, assisting him in every way, to try to win the favor of Lokanath Goswami. He said, I have not got a guru. And Lokanath Swami said, what guru do you need? Lord Chaitanya, because everyone by this time had heard about, what Narottam Thakur's life and everything. He said, you've got Lord Chaitanya, he's your guru. He's been giving you instructions all along. Why do you need anyone else? You've got the guru of the gurus. He said, no. He thought himself, I know he needed shelter. So anyway, he served him meanly for a year. And after a year, still Lokanath Goswami was hesitant. Narottam was even going in the night to the place where Lokanath Goswami would pass stool and this and that, and cleaning the place up, rendering any menial service he could, eager for service. Still Lokanath was wasn't giving in. He wasn't relenting. So that night, Lokanath had a dream, and in the dream, Lord Chaitanya came and appeared in his dream. He said, I've told you, you must initiate Narottam. I've already told you that. Why are you not doing this? And Lokanath said, all right, but he'll be my only disciple. Lokanath Goswami only had one disciple initiated. It was Narottam. So the next day, or an auspicious moment, very shortly afterwards, Lokanath initiated Narottam Das. And then, of course, he took the direction. He got direction from Lokanath Goswami to take shelter of Jiva Goswami, to take Siksha of him. And then they studied together. And then, some years later, Jiva Goswami sent them off with the Goswami literatures to Bengal and Orissa. And as we already mentioned, they were stolen by King Biharambir on the way. But Narottam and Shamananda continued on their journey to Bengal and Orissa. Srinivas stayed back for a long time, many years. Stayed back to recover those literatures and also convert the king, and a whole kingdom became Vaishnava. Eventually they met up again, but it was years and years later. So Narottam, they first of all they visited various devotees in Navadvip and different places in Navadvip, Ekachakragram, and different places they went, wherever. They went to here and there. Jajigram, different places they went visiting devotees who were living there. In that area, including Mother Janava and Vidoy Chaitanya and so many others who were still present. Most of the devotees of Vedacharya, Srivas Thakur, Nityananda, they'd all left, they'd all gone already. But they visited different places, even the house of Sachi Mata, she was also gone, but Ishan Thakur was still there in Mayapur. The house was broken down practically, but they visited all these places. Then they went on further to Keturi, the home of Narottam. His family, father had passed away, but many of his family were still there, and they were in ecstasy to again see Narottam after so long time had passed. And there in Keturi, Narottam Das started to preach kirtan and preaching along with Shamananda. But Shamananda left after a few days, maybe a week or two, and went off to Orissa because he was from Orissa, Orissa background. So They were then separated, and Narottam Das was there. Of course, they were people that were Vaishnava anyway, more or less, but they were not pure Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And he was initiating, he started to initiate many, many people, including Brahmins, although he was born in a non-Brahmin family. He initiated Ganga Narayan Chakravarti. Ramchandra Kaviraj, his very close friend from Vrindavan, also came to stay there with him, and he initiated him also. And his cousin named Santosh, who had more or less taken over the management of the kingdom, was also initiated. So many were initiated by him. And the preaching was going on strongly. In the meantime, Janava had... Janava? Who was it? I can't remember. Anyway, a letter came. I think it was from Janava. It was from someone, maybe it was Jiva Goswami, sent a letter to Narottam telling that he should organize a grand festival, a Gorpurnim festival. Up to that time, because this is like 30, maybe 30 years after Mahaprabhu's passing or more. No one really knows, there's no record apparently. 30, 40, 50 years after Mahaprabhu's, unmanifesting his pastimes. And there was no Gorpurnim festival, so to speak. And believe it or not, that many of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the line had been, distorted. There were all kinds of distorted philosophies developing, apasampadayas and so on were already cropping up in different parts of India, and the pure teaching of Lord Chaitanya was being very much, perverted. So the purpose of this festival was to bring the devotees together, unity, and to establish or re-establish the pure teachings of Lord Chaitanya amongst the Vaishnavas. So the message was that Narottam should try to arrange this festival in Keturi, of all places, and how to do this. And also to install 5 sets of Radha Krishna deities, because that wasn't very popular amongst the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. They just chant Hare Krishna, because they needed it to establish deity worship for their own purification and clarification of the Siddhanta, etc., as well as the deity of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Vishnu Priya. So 6 sets altogether were to be established. So this was festival, some notice was there, many months. So how to do this, a big thing, inviting hundreds and thousands of Vaishnavas from all over India and making a big arrangement. So luckily Santosh had by this time become a disciple of Narottam, and he was very rich, being the heir to the throne, so he volunteered to pay for the whole thing, to finance the whole festival. So preparations began, they built temples and kirtan halls and accommodation places for devotees and all sorts of things, making arrangements to hold a grand festival, sent out invitations all over the place, all over India, wherever the Vaishnavas were, invited them all to this grand festival in Keturi. And Janava was to be the guest of honor. She was the overseeing, she presided over the whole thing, practically speaking. And many other great, Srinivas was coming, and Raghunandana Thakur, Hridaya Chaitanya, so many great devotees were invited to this event. And the brothers of Srivas, Sri Nidhi and Sripati and others, many Vaishnavas who were still present, practically all of them came. Not so much mention of the ones in Vrindavan, but in Bengal and Orissa, they practically all turned up for this grand festival, thousands of devotees, and they invited all the locals, all the local dignitary and kings and everything in the local area were invited, and boats were arranged to cross over the Padma, so many things. The river's very big. And then accommodation, Narottam personally oversaw all the accommodation with Ramchandra. They oversaw, everyone got prasadam and nice accommodations, everyone, no matter who they had their own specific accommodation. Very carefully arranged this grand festival. And the festival began, and Narottam, of course, was very famous for kirtan. He developed this padavali, this particular kind of kirtan, which was very, very special kirtan, which was accompanied with, not just singing, but dramatic presentations, movements, and all sorts of things, Yes, I don't know exactly, but you see it sometimes, something like this. Usually it's the Sahajyas, the Bowls or somebody who do these sort of things. You know, they got the wrong understanding, but they try to imitate. With Narottam Das, it was an expression of reciprocation with Lord Chaitanya, the Lord of his heart. It said it started with Swarup Damodar. He was the first one to, if you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the Rathayatra pastime, Swarup Damodar would be always there with Lord Chaitanya, singing and acting exactly the mood of the moment, you know, for Lord Chaitanya, so that he could relish the bhav or the mood that he was in, through the songs of Swarup Damodar or the dramatic performances of Swarup Damodar, and combined with song, etc. So it started there. Narottam Das developed it more and more, and they were going in different, according to the scene, changing the mood, changing the pace, everything. You know, it wasn't just sort of repetitive, like machine gun, like kirtan or something. It was completely, absolutely full of ecstatic love of God. So he started the kirtan. Everyone was in ecstasy, and then the deities were all installed. You know, I think Srinivasacharya oversaw the installations of the deities along with Janavama. These sets of deities, ecstatic with thousands of devotees there. And the kirtan really began the day after the initiation, the next day, when the 3-day festival, the day of the installation. And the kirtan was so ecstatic. Everyone was just swooning in ecstasy. And then suddenly, Narottam Das was, Lord Chaitanya had told him in a dream that he would also come. And he was waiting for the moment when Lord Chaitanya would appear. The kirtan was getting more and more ecstatic, and suddenly Lord Chaitanya and the whole Panchatattva turned up in the middle of the kirtan, and more or less everyone could see them dancing in the kirtan. And others came, Rupa and Sanatan, all great devotees suddenly manifested who already left the world, but they suddenly appeared in the middle of this kirtan. It's the most, well, I was going to say, whatever descriptions are there, the most out-of-this-world kirtan that you could ever imagine. Was going on for hours and hours, right through the day into the night. They couldn't stop. It was incredible kirtans were going on. Narottam Das Thakur was leading the kirtans. Others were also there. You know, some of the Ghosh brothers were there. So many great kirtaniyas were there. And then in the morning, Janava then began cooking. And she cooked a feast for all the Vaishnavas. She's an expert cook. And she personally served all the Vaishnavas herself. Everyone was in so much ecstasy. 3-day festival. And then everyone departed after that. So this great festival, which Janava, specifically being the guest of honor, made it clear what the actual Siddhanta of Gaur Seva is, or Lord Chaitanya's movement is. And the devotees were, with Janava there, of course, were all united. That was the purpose of the festival, to bring all these different deviant ideas, to bring them all together and unite everybody again. And so that's one of the main purposes of Gaur-Purnima festival, is unity, to fulfill Prabhupada's desire to see peace and unity in the world. So then the festival, and many devotees stayed for many days. Eventually everyone departed. And Narottam remained there in Keturi. He didn't really go much. He didn't travel very much. He more or less stayed in that area all of his life. He never went back to Vrindavan. The others did. Shyamananda, Srinivas, they also went back to Vrindavan, but he didn't. And he stayed there. Ramchandra Kaviraj stayed there also, and he had many, 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 many great disciples persons who took shelter of him. Some of them were from Manipur. They went back to Manipur, converted the entire state of Manipur into Gaudiya Vaishnavism, pretty much the entire state. And in other places, Tripura and different places, devotees went preaching in different parts of what we now call Bangladesh. So after some time, news, of course, was spreading everywhere about Narottam's effect of Narottam's preaching there in Keturi. And many local Brahmins and Brahmins from different parts of Bengal were hearing about it from a distance, and they were becoming very envious, because he was born, just like Haridas was born in a low-class family. Many times the Brahmins were, or the Muslims in his case, were very envious. So in this case, the Brahmins some of them were very envious, and they tried to plot against him, even the idea of maybe even killing him. It was really they were really, materialistic. And so they approached the local king and asked the king, told the king what was going on. We have to do something about this. This low-class person is initiating Brahmins, even. How dare he do this? This is against the whole Hindu religion. He's breaking all of, religious principles. This has to be stopped. So they gathered up a big group of Mahants. The king wrote a letter. They wrote a letter to Narottam explaining, you better stop doing this. This is a serious business. Narottam wrote back with so many Shastric injunctions, statements, etc., qualifying what he was doing. The king was kind of convinced, really, by these statements, but still he had to abide by the request of the Brahmins. So they gathered up a large troop of the most erudite pandits, including Rup Narayan, one famous Digbijay, unconquerable Brahmana, very famous person. So they all went together, marching off towards Keturi, with the intention of, proving Narottam Das as being, unbonafide, and stopping him from his business. So on the way, and this news came to Narottam and his followers that they were coming. So Ganganarayan and Ramchandra decided they would deal with this, because they were both Brahmins by birth. So they disguised themselves as simple, salesmen. One disguised himself as a potter, and the other as a betel nut salesman. So they went outside of Keturi, on the road coming from wherever the king's place was, and they set up two little stalls, one selling clay pots and one selling pan, or betel nut. And they waited for the party of the Rup Narayan and the pandits to come. And sure enough, after some time, the big party of pandits arrived there, and there they were calling, "Hey, come get some pan, Hey, clay pots, because they need these things for, chewing on and drinking and so on. So, they started to mingle with these shopkeepers, some of the pandits. And the shopkeepers were speaking in Sanskrit. They couldn't believe their ears. Two ordinary village shopkeepers speaking in very, very erudite scholarly Sanskrit. What is this? What type of place is this where the storekeepers speak in Sanskrit? And then they thought, my goodness, let's test them out. So they started talking philosophy. And the shopkeepers completely defeated the pandits. And they went back to the king and Rupa Narayan and said, I don't know what's going on around here. The local shopkeepers are big scholars. And Rupa Narayan, what's this now? So the king said, you better go and test them out. So Rupa Narayan went there, and he was also solidly defeated by these two shopkeepers. He couldn't believe his ears. He said, this is too much. If even the, and then they revealed themselves, Ramchandra and Ganganarayan, that we are lowly servants of Narottam Das. So Rupa Narayan said, my God, if we're defeated by lowly servants of Narottam, and the king said, what will Narottam be like? So let's go. So they all packed their bags and went back home again. And they gave up. They realized that they were wrong. Not only that, actually, they all became disciples of Narottam. They all surrendered to Narottam. The king became a disciple, his wife. They all became disciples. So the whole kingdom then became devotees like that. So this way Narottam was preaching and converting all the local people to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Time was passing by, and Narottam was thinking now the time to depart was nigh. So one day he was in the house of Ganganarayan in Murshidabad in Bengal, and he was thinking that, whatever he was thinking. There are different stories. He apparently went into samadhi, and just kind of disappeared as if he wasn't dead or gone. And still there were some envious people. They were criticizing, just see your so-called spiritual master, your so-called, Mukta Purush. He had all the signs, when he was born, he had all the signs of a Mukta Purush, long arms down to his knees, beautiful lotus eyes, all the signs of a Mukta Purush, broad chest and so on, as a child. But a very dark complexion, but now of course he was golden now. But still they were envious of him, because he was born in a low-class family. So there's still this caste idea was there. So they were then started criticizing him. Just see, he's just dying like an ordinary person. So Ganganarayan and the other devotees, they were very disturbed by this criticism. They started to pray to Narottam. They thought he was leaving the world because he did 3 days or more. He was just not, it seemed like no life symptoms were left. They prayed for him, please save us from this. So then suddenly Narottam Das Thakur reappeared. He came out of deep, deep samadhi. Not only that, but a golden Brahmin thread appeared on his chest, pure gold. And everyone was stunned and shocked. And so many people were converted to pure Vaishnavism at that point of time. So then after some time, still after a while, he decided, we went back to Keturi, and in Keturi he decided now's the time to return. Let's say, unmanifest his pastimes, return to his eternal service of assisting Champakalata and so on in Goloka by preparing milk products. So he asked his devotees, please take me down to the river Padma, or river Ganga. And they all went down to the Ganga together. He said, I want you to bathe me with Ganga Jal, or with Padma, the water of Padma. Take it in your palms and just pour it over him. So they all did like an abhishek. They started doing an abhishek for Narottam. And lo and behold, to their shock, as they poured the water, his body started to melt. His body started melting and turning into milk. And the milk was just flowing from his body, was just like turning into milk, flowing into the Padma. But they had their instruction. They thought, oh no, we're going to lose. They would, you can imagine. But they carried on doing it. There was like divine force making them do it. And gradually, Narottam's body disappeared and just turned into milk. Ganganarayan gathered the milk into a pot, as much as he could. And they took that pot to Murshidabad. And there they established a Dugdha Samadhi. Maybe the only Dugdha Samadhi in the world, I don't know, milk Samadhi. Narottam's body was established there in this form of milk. I don't know exactly how it fits, but they have a Dugdha Samadhi there, which is where devotees go. And he also has Samadhi in the Radha Gokulananda temple in Vrindavan, of course, as you probably know. But there I think it's a Pushpa Samadhi there. It's not the real Samadhis in Murshidabad. And c'est la vie. Narottam Das Thakur ki jai. So it's time to finish. It's 5 to 9. If you want to read more, get that book. I haven't read it. I hope to read it this year. Wonderful book by Sitala Devi, the wife of Hari Sori Prabhu, on Narottam Das Thakur. It's wonderful to hear. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, by hearing about great persons like Narottam Das, one can develop confidence, determination, and satisfaction. Gives us confidence, in which we need, and determination, and also satisfying to the heart. To hear about great devotees is said to be more potent than hearing about the Lord directly, because it's more pleasing to the Lord. And Narottam Das was literally the ecstatic manifestation of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda combined. Srila Narottam Das Thakur ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Agoda Premanandi. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much. So you can tell the board writer that's the same verse tomorrow. He doesn't have to do it tonight, okay? Is that all right? Haribol. Maybe this evening, if we're available, I don't know, we'll see our timing, we might do some bhajans tonight. I said that sometime today. I've got to go out in the afternoon, but we'll see if we have time in the evening. If we have, we will. Of course, anyone can sing them, and those from Bengal, some of you are devotees here are Bengali, you should sing all day long. These from Prarthana, get a copy of Prarthana and sing all day long. Prema Bhakti Chandrika, one of the compilations of Narottam. Prabhupada, like Srila Prabhupada, used to love singing the songs of Narottam Das Thakur. He would sing on his own sometimes, just playing harmonium, singing the bhajans. They're Gaur Prema. These bhajans are nothing but the prema of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his ecstasy. Hare Krishna. Haribol. You don't read out book scores here? You don't read the book scores? When? Oh, yeah? I missed it the other day. Maybe you didn't read any out. I missed yes. I was here yesterday. I missed reading. The other day I was here. Here. How many books yesterday?
Yesterday,
None of you went. So no books. That's why no scores are written. Hare Krishna. Gauranga. Hare Krishna. Hare Om.